They say blood is thicker than water, but no one tells you what happens when that blood turns cold as ice. My name is Grace Mitchell, and for 67 years, I believed family meant everything. I sacrificed my dreams, my money, and my peace of mind for my younger sister. I raised her when our parents died. I paid for her education when she had nothing. I bailed her out of every mess she created. And on what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, her wedding day, I discovered she'd been plotting to steal everything I had and lock me away like I was nothing. But here's the thing about underestimating a retired schoolteacher: we know how to plan, we know how to wait, and we know exactly when to strike. This is the story of how my sister tried to destroy me, and how I made sure her wedding day became the day she'd never forget. I was 15 years old when our parents died in a car accident on a rainy October night. One moment I was a carefree teenager worried about algebra tests and school dances, and the next I was the guardian of my 7-year-old sister, Patricia. Patty, as everyone called her. Our Aunt Martha took us in, but she made it clear from day one that she was doing her Christian duty, nothing more. She fed us and gave us beds to sleep in, but there was no warmth in that house, no love. So I became the one who tucked Patty in at night, who braided her hair for school, who helped her with homework, who dried her tears when she had nightmares about Mom and Dad. I graduated high school while working 2 part-time jobs. I gave up my scholarship to the state university because I couldn't leave Patty with Aunt Martha alone. Instead, I went to community college, became a teacher, and made sure Patty had everything she needed. When she wanted to go to that expensive private college for interior design, I took out loans. When she wanted to start her own business, I co-signed for her. When her business failed and creditors came knocking, I paid off her debts. That was the pattern of our lives. I gave and Patty took. But I never minded, not really. She was my baby sister, the only family I had left. And every time she called me in tears, every time she showed up at my door with another crisis, I opened my arms and my wallet. I met my husband Robert when I was 32. He was a kind man, a good man who loved me despite all my baggage. He understood about Patty, even though he gently suggested more than once that I was enabling her instead of helping her. "Grace, honey," he'd say, holding my hand across our kitchen table. "Sometimes the greatest love is letting people face the consequences of their choices." But I couldn't do it. I couldn't watch Patty struggle when I had the means to help. Robert and I had a good life. We couldn't have children of our own, which broke my heart for years, but we had each other. We had our little house that we'd paid off after 20 years of mortgage payments. We had our modest savings, his pension from the post office, and my teacher's retirement. We had Sunday dinners and quiet evenings on the porch, and 33 years of the kind of steady, peaceful love that doesn't make for dramatic stories but makes for a beautiful life. When Robert died 5 years ago from a sudden heart attack, I thought I would die too. The grief was crushing, suffocating, but Patty was there for once. She came to the funeral, held my hand, helped me sort through Robert's things. For a few months, I thought maybe we'd finally have the relationship I'd always dreamed of. 2 sisters, supporting each other as equals. I should have known better. Within 6 months, Patty was back to her old ways. She needed money for a can't-miss investment opportunity. Then she needed money because her landlord was raising her rent. Then she needed money because her car broke down. I gave and gave and gave, the way I always had, because that's what family does. That's what I told myself every time I wrote another check, every time I transferred money into her account. Patty was 59 years old now, and she'd never managed to build a stable life for herself. She'd been married twice, both times to men who eventually got tired of her spending habits and drama. She'd started and failed at 4 different businesses. She'd lived in 7 different cities, always chasing some new dream, some new beginning that never quite materialized. So when she called me 6 months ago, breathless with excitement, to tell me she'd met someone special, I was genuinely happy for her. "His name is Richard Harrington," she gushed over the phone. "Grace, he's wonderful. He's a businessman, very successful, and he treats me like a queen. I think this might really be it. I think he might be the one." "That's wonderful, Patty," I said, smiling as I stirred my evening tea. "Tell me about him." She went on and on about Richard, how he owned a consulting firm, how he had a beautiful home in the suburbs, how he took her to fancy restaurants and bought her expensive gifts. For once, Patty had found someone who could keep up with her expensive tastes without my help. 3 months later, she called to tell me they were engaged. And Grace, she said, her voice taking on that sweet tone she used when she wanted something, I want you to be my maid of honor. You've been more than a sister to me. You've been like a mother. I can't imagine getting married without you standing beside me. I cried happy tears that night. Finally, after all these years, Patty was acknowledging everything I'd done for her. Finally, she was including me in her joy instead of just her crisis. Of course I'll be your maid of honor, I told her. I'd be honored. We started planning the wedding. Richard wanted something big and elegant, and for once, Patty wouldn't have to scrape by or ask me to fund it. Richard was paying for everything. The venue, the catering, the flowers, everything. It was going to be at the Riverside Country Club, the fanciest place in town. Patty was finally getting the fairy tale wedding she'd always dreamed of. I threw myself into helping her plan. We spent hours looking at dresses, choosing flowers, tasting cakes. Patty seemed happier than I'd ever seen her. And I was happy too, happy to finally see my sisters settled and secure. I should have noticed the little things. The way Patty would quickly change the subject whenever I asked detailed questions about Richard. The way she discouraged me from coming to their house, always insisting we meet at restaurants or at my place. The way she started asking me strange questions about my finances, my will, my health. You're getting older, Grace, she said one afternoon as we were addressing wedding invitations at my kitchen table. Have you thought about what happens if something happens to you? Do you have everything in order? I'm 67, not 97, I laughed. But yes, I have a will. Everything goes to you, of course. You're my only family. Something flickered in her eyes, something I couldn't quite read. That's good, she said softly. That's really good. But have you thought about setting up a power of attorney? You know, just in case. It would make things so much easier if anything ever happened. Patty, I'm healthy as a horse. Robert's death was sudden, but I take care of myself. I know, she said quickly. I just worry about you, that's all. Living alone in this big house. What if you fell? What if you had a medical emergency? I have good neighbors. And Marcus, you remember Robert's friend Marcus, the lawyer, he checks in on me regularly. At the mention of Marcus, Patty's face tightened. Oh, right, Marcus. I didn't think much of it at the time. I was too caught up in wedding plans, too happy to see my sister so excited about her future. The wedding was set for the last Saturday in September, when the weather would be perfect and the leaves would just be starting to turn. 3 weeks before the big day, Patty asked if she could store some boxes at my house. Richard and I are doing some renovations before the wedding, she explained. We're knocking down a wall to make the living room bigger, and there's just stuff everywhere. Could I just put a few boxes in your spare room for a couple of weeks? Of course, I said. Bring them over whenever you like. She arrived the next day with 6 large boxes. I helped her carry them upstairs to the guest room, Robert's old office that I'd never had the heart to fully clean out. Thanks, Grace, she said, slightly out of breath. You're a lifesaver. I'll get them out of your way right after the honeymoon. Take your time, I assured her. It's not like I'm using the space. 2 days later, I was looking for some old photograph albums I thought Patty might want for a wedding slideshow. I knew I'd stored them in the guest room closet. When I opened the closet door, I saw that one of Patty's boxes had been stacked carelessly and was starting to tip. I caught it before it fell, but the flap opened and papers spilled out onto the floor. I bent down to gather them up, intending to just stuff them back in the box. But then I saw my name, my signature, on documents I'd never seen before. My hand started shaking as I picked up the first page. It was a loan application for $50,000 secured against my house. My signature was at the bottom, clear as day. But I had never signed this. I had never even heard of this loan. With trembling fingers I pulled out more papers from the box. Another loan application, this one for $30,000. A credit card application in my name. Documents about refinancing my mortgage. All with my signature, all completely foreign to me. And then I found the worst thing of all, a letter from Richard to Patty, printed out from an email. My dear Patricia, it read, I've reviewed the documents with my attorney as we discussed. Once we're married, the plan can proceed smoothly. We'll have Grace declared incompetent. Her age and the confusion you've documented will make it easy. With the power of attorney and your relationship as her only family, we'll have control of her assets within 90 days. The house alone should net us at least $400K once we sell it. As we discussed, this needs to be handled delicately. Keep being the devoted sister. Make sure she signs whatever else we need at the wedding. Once the honeymoon is over, we'll start the process. She'll never know what hit her. I read it 3 times, each time hoping I'd misunderstood. But there was no misunderstanding. My sister, my baby sister, the girl I'd raised, the woman I'd supported for 52 years, was planning to steal everything from me and have me declared incompetent so I couldn't fight back. I sank onto the floor of that guest room. Those papers scattered around me and I couldn't breathe. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, so cold. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a desperate mistake. This was a plan. A con. And I was the mark. How long had she been forging my signature? How many documents had she falsified? And the loans, were they real? Was I already in debt without knowing it? I don't know how long I sat there on that floor. Long enough that my legs went numb. Long enough that the afternoon light faded into evening. Long enough that I cycled through shock, denial, grief, and finally anger. A cold, clear anger unlike anything I'd ever felt before. Patty thought I was a fool, an easy target, a confused old woman who could be manipulated and discarded. She thought she could smile to my face while plotting my destruction behind my back. She was wrong. I gathered up every paper, every document, and I put them all in a bag. Then I carefully repacked Patty's box exactly as it had been. I went downstairs and called the one person I knew I could trust. "Marcus," I said when he answered, "I need your help. And I need you to not ask questions until you see what I have to show you. Can you come over?" "Grace, are you okay? You sound—" "I'm fine. But I won't be if I don't do something about this. How soon can you be here?" "I'm on my way." 20 minutes later, Marcus Thompson sat at my kitchen table, reading through the documents I'd found. His jaw got tighter with every page he turned. When he finished, he looked at me with a mixture of anger and sympathy that almost broke my composure. "Grace," he said slowly, "this is fraud. This is elder abuse. We need to call the police right now." "No," I said firmly. "Not yet." "What do you mean, not yet? She's been forging your signature, taking out loans in your name. I know what she's been doing, Marcus. And I know what I need to do about it." I leaned forward, my hands flat on the table. "The wedding is in 3 weeks. She thinks I'm a helpless old woman who doesn't know what's happening. I'm gonna let her keep thinking that. And then, on her wedding day, in front of all her fancy guests and her con artist fiancé, I'm gonna make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person Patricia Mitchell really is." Marcus stared at me. "You want revenge. I want justice," I corrected. "And I want to make sure she never does this to anyone else. If I go to the police now, she'll make excuses, claim I'm confused, say she was just trying to help me. She's been setting that up already with her comments about my age and my health. But if we wait, if we catch her in the act, if we have evidence and witnesses, then there's no talking her way out of it. This is risky, Grace. Everything in my life has been about playing it safe and taking care of Patty," I said. "Look where that got me. It's time to take a risk." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and opened a note-taking app. "All right," he said. "Tell me exactly what you want to do. And let's make sure we do this right." That night, sitting at my kitchen table with my late husband's best friend, I began planning my sister's downfall. And for the first time in 5 years, maybe in my entire life, I felt truly powerful. The morning after I found those documents, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The shock had worn off, replaced by a cold determination. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. My eyes, usually soft and accommodating, had a steel in them now. Marcus had stayed late into the night, helping me develop what he called the strategy. We'd gone through every document, photographed everything, and created a timeline of Patty's deception. Then we'd carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it. The key, Marcus had explained, is that we need more evidence. We need to catch them in the act of trying to execute their plan. And we need witnesses, credible, unimpeachable witnesses. He'd made some calls to colleagues, including a friend at the district attorney's office and a private investigator he'd worked with on estate cases. By midnight, we had a plan. Now I just had to play my part. The hardest part was pretending nothing had changed. Patty called me the next morning, bright and cheerful. "Good morning, big sister. I was thinking we should go dress shopping today. I know you said you'd wear that navy dress you have, but I really want you to have something new and special. My treat." Every word felt like a knife, but I kept my voice warm and grateful. "Oh, Patty, that's so sweet of you. But you don't need to spend money on me. Save it for the honeymoon." "Nonsense! You're my maid of honor. Besides, Richard's been so generous. He gave me his credit card and told me to make sure everything is perfect. She laughed, that tinkling laugh I'd always thought was charming. Now it sounded like breaking glass. Plus, I want you to look your best in the photos. These pictures will last forever. I bet you do, I thought. Need me looking presentable before you lock me away and steal everything I have. Well, if you insist, I said. What time should I meet you? We spent the afternoon at an upscale boutique. Patty played the devoted sister perfectly, fussing over me, helping me try on dresses, exclaiming how beautiful I looked. I watched her in the dressing room mirror, this woman I'd raised and loved, and tried to see the monster beneath the mask. But she was good. She'd had 52 years of practice manipulating me. This one, she declared, holding up an elegant burgundy dress with a flowing skirt. This is perfect for you, Grace. It brings out the warmth in your complexion. The dress was beautiful and absurdly expensive, $800 according to the tag I glimpsed. I started to protest, but Patty waved me off. Richard insists. He wants his new sister-in-law to feel like family. Sister-in-law family. The words were ashes in my mouth, but I smiled. You really found a good one this time. Didn't you? I really did. Patty's eyes got misty. Grace, I know I haven't always been the easiest person to deal with. I know I've leaned on you too much over the years. But I want you to know how grateful I am for everything. You gave up so much for me. For a moment, just a brief, painful moment, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think this was real remorse, real love. But then I remembered those documents. Keep being the devoted sister. Make sure she signs whatever else we need at the wedding. You're my sister, I said softly, touching her hand. I'd do anything for you. Her smile widened. I know you would. And that means everything to me. We had lunch after shopping, at one of those trendy restaurants with tiny portions and enormous prices. Patty ordered wine and insisted I have a glass too, even though I rarely drank anymore. To new beginnings, she toasted, clinking her glass against mine. To family, I replied, taking a small sip. As we ate, Patty steered the conversation in a direction I'd been expecting. You know, Grace, I've been thinking. After Richard and I get married, we'd love for you to come stay with us sometimes. That big house of yours must feel so empty. It's home, I said carefully. Robert and I made a life there. I know. But you're not getting any younger and I worry about you. What if something happened? What if you fell or had a medical emergency and no one was there? It was almost word for word what she'd said before. Setting the stage, planting seeds about my supposed frailty and incompetence. I let my hand tremble slightly as I set down my fork. I suppose you're right. I have been feeling a bit more forgetful lately. Just little things. Where I put my keys, whether I took my medication. Patty's eyes sharpened with interest. Really? Have you mentioned this to your doctor? Oh, it's nothing to bother a doctor about. Just normal aging, I'm sure. Still, maybe we should set up an appointment, just to be safe. I could come with you. That's sweet of you, honey. But let's get through the wedding first. I'm probably just tired from all the excitement. She nodded, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. She thought I was making this easy for her, giving her ammunition for her claims of incompetence. Good, let her think that. Over the next 2 weeks, I played my part perfectly. I called Patty to ask her questions I already knew the answers to. I forgot a lunch date we'd scheduled, then apologized profusely, claiming I'd gotten confused about the day. I left my reading glasses at her house and acted flustered trying to find them. Every confused moment, every forgotten detail, every sign of decline was carefully calculated, and Patty ate it up. I could practically see her mentally documenting each incident for her eventual case against me. Meanwhile, Marcus was busy behind the scenes. His private investigator friend, a sharp woman named Diane Chen, discovered that the loans Patty had taken out in my name were real. She'd been making minimum payments on them using funds she'd been siphoning from my accounts. Small amounts I'd never noticed, written off as bank fees or routine expenses. She's been planning this for at least a year, Diane reported during one of our secret meetings at Marcus's office. Possibly longer. The forgeries are good. She must have practiced your signature extensively, and she's been creating a paper trail of your supposed incompetence. I found medical appointment requests she made in your name, then canceled. She's been telling people you've been confused, forgetting things. Building her case, Marcus said grimly. Exactly. If this had gone to court, she'd have had documentation. Witnesses who'd heard her express concern about you. Financial records showing erratic behavior, which was really her stealing from you. But it would look like you were mismanaging your money. I felt sick listening to it, but I kept my voice steady. What about Richard? What's his story? Diane pulled out another file. Richard Harrington, 56 years old. He does run a consulting business, but it's not as successful as he claims. He's heavily in debt, business loans, 2 mortgages, maxed out credit cards. He's been sued 3 times by former clients for breach of contract. He needs money badly. My guess is he and Patty saw each other coming. 2 desperate people looking for a mark. You just happen to be the easiest target. Not as easy as they think, I said quietly. Marcus leaned forward. Grace, we have enough evidence now to go to the police. Diane's documented everything. We have the forged documents, the fraudulent loans, the emails between Patty and Richard. You don't have to wait until the wedding. Yes, I do, I said firmly. If we act now, they'll lawyer up, claim it was all a misunderstanding, maybe even try to turn it around on me. They'll say I'm a confused old woman who misunderstood their help. But if we wait, if we catch them at the wedding trying to get me to sign more documents, if we have witnesses to their behavior. I looked at both of them. Then there's no way out for them. Diane nodded slowly. She's right. The wedding is the perfect trap. They'll be confident, off their guard. They think they've won. All right, Marcus agreed reluctantly. But we do this carefully. Diane will be at the wedding undercover, maybe as a guest of yours. I'll be there as your +1. We'll have recording devices, and I'll have my contact from the DA's office on standby. The moment they make their move, we shut it down. And I'll have a little surprise of my own prepared, I added. If Patty wants to make a spectacle of her wedding day, I'll make sure she gets one she'll never forget. The week before the wedding, things intensified. Patty called me almost daily, each time with more concerns about my well-being. Grace, I stopped by your house yesterday, and you'd left the stove on, she said one afternoon. I hadn't left the stove on. I'd been at the grocery store all afternoon. But I knew what she was doing. Creating incidents she could later claim as evidence of my incompetence. Oh my goodness, I said, making my voice quaver. I don't remember using the stove yesterday. Are you sure? Positive. The burner was on high. Thank God I came by when I did. You could have burned the house down. Liar. But I played along. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. It's okay, honey. That's what family is for. Listen, I've been talking to Richard, and we think after the wedding, it might be a good idea for you to move in with us. Just for a while. Until we figure out what's best for you. There it was. The beginning of the endgame. Get me into their house, where they'd have complete control, where they could isolate me from friends and neighbors, where they could make their move. Oh, I don't want to be a burden on you newlyweds, I protested weakly. You could never be a burden. And honestly, Grace, I'd feel better knowing you were safe. We can talk about it more after the honeymoon, but just think about it, okay? Okay, I said meekly. I'll think about it. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen, the kitchen where Robert and I had shared thousands of meals, where I'd baked cookies for school fundraisers, where I'd cried when I learned I couldn't have children, where I'd laughed with friends over coffee. My home, the home they wanted to steal from me. I called Marcus. She's accelerating the timeline. I think they're planning to make their move right after the honeymoon. We need to be ready. We will be, Marcus assured me. Grace, are you absolutely sure about this? Once we set things in motion at the wedding, there's no going back. Your relationship with Patty will be over. It's already over, I said quietly. It's been over since the moment she decided I was worth more to her dead or institutionalized than alive and free. I'm just making sure she knows it. The rehearsal dinner was 2 nights before the wedding. It was held at an expensive steakhouse, with about 30 people in attendance. Richard's business associates, some of Patty's friends, and a few distant relatives I barely knew. I was seated at the head table, right next to Patty. Richard gave a toast. He was handsome in that artificial way, 2 perfect teeth, 2 carefully styled hair, a suit that cost more than some people's cars. To my beautiful bride-to-be, he said, raising his glass. Patricia, you've brought so much joy into my life, and I want to thank Grace for raising such an incredible woman. Grace, your sister tells me you were more like a mother to her. We're so glad to have you as part of our family. Everyone applauded. I smiled and nodded, playing the grateful older sister. But I caught the look that passed between Richard and Patty, smug, satisfied, victorious. After dinner, I excused myself to use the restroom. As I walked down the hallway, I heard voices coming from a side room. I recognized Patty's laugh. Can't believe how easy this has been, she was saying. She's practically senile already. Did you see her fumble with her napkin at dinner? Couldn't figure out how to unfold it. I'd fumbled with the napkin on purpose, of course, but hearing her mockery still stung. Richard's voice replied, "Just a few more days, darling. After the wedding, we'll start the process. My attorney has all the papers ready. With the power of attorney you'll get her to sign at the reception. We can start moving her assets immediately. And the house. Listed for sale by the end of the month. Don't worry. By the time she realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. She'll be in a state facility, properly medicated, and completely out of the way." My hands clenched into fists. Properly medicated. They weren't just planning to steal from me, they were planning to drug me into compliance. Patty laughed again. "I almost feel bad. She's been so sweet, so trusting. But honestly, Grace, she's lived long enough. She had her time with Robert, her little teaching career. Now it's my turn to have something. Richard and I deserve this." "You deserve everything, my love," Richard murmured. "And after this weekend, you'll have it." I'd heard enough. I slipped away quietly, returned to the table, and continued playing my role. But inside, my resolve hardened into something unbreakable. 2 more days. I just had to hold on for 2 more days. That night, I met with Marcus and Diane at my house one final time. We went over every detail of the plan. "The ceremony is at 3 o'clock, Marcus reviewed. "Reception starts at 5. Based on what you overheard, they'll try to get you to sign documents during the reception, probably in a private moment." "I'll be wearing a wire," I confirmed. "And Diane will be positioned nearby." Diane nodded. "I'll be your niece, from out of town. No one will question it. These big weddings always have random relatives showing up. I'll stick close to you, and I'll have a backup recording device. My contact at the DA's office will be on standby," Marcus added. "The moment we have them on recording attempting to defraud you, he'll move in with a warrant. We'll also have uniformed officers positioned outside the venue, out of sight." "What about the other guests?" I asked. "A lot of innocent people are going to witness this." "That's unavoidable," Marcus said gently. "But Grace, what Patty and Richard are doing isn't just wrong, it's criminal. Elder fraud is a serious crime, and they were planning to institutionalize you against your will. If we don't stop them at the wedding, they'll just try again, maybe with someone else." He was right. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about stopping 2 predators who saw vulnerable older people as marks. "There's one more thing," I said slowly. "I want to address the guests. After they're arrested, before everyone leaves, I want them to understand what happened and why." "Are you sure?" Diane asked. "That's going to be hard. I've been doing hard things my whole life," I replied. "This is just one more." The night before the wedding, Patty came over to my house. She brought a bottle of wine and suggested we have a sisters' night before the big day. We sat on my back porch watching the sunset, just like we'd done 100 times before. Except this time, I knew it would be the last. "Thank you for everything, Grace," Patty said, sipping her wine. "I know I haven't always shown it, but you mean the world to me. I don't know what I would have done without you all these years." I looked at her, really looked at her. I tried to see the 7-year-old girl who'd clung to me after our parents' funeral. The teenager who'd been so proud when I came to her school plays. The young woman who'd danced at my wedding to Robert. Where had that girl gone? Had she ever really existed, or had I just invented her in my mind, seeing what I wanted to see instead of what was really there? "I love you, Patty," I said, and it was true. Even knowing everything, even after the betrayal, some part of me still loved the sister I thought I had. "I always have." She smiled, and for a moment I saw tears in her eyes. Were they real? Did some tiny part of her feel guilt for what she was about to do? I'd never know. "I love you too, big sister," she said softly. "More than you'll ever know." We sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank below the horizon. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, one way or another, the truth would come out. I was ready. I didn't sleep much the night before the wedding. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the years with Patty. The memories played like a movie in my mind. Her first day of school, me holding her hand all the way to the classroom door. Her high school graduation, where she'd thanked me in her speech and made me cry happy tears. Her first wedding, where I'd been a bridesmaid and truly believed she'd found happiness. How many of those moments had been real? How many had been manipulation, even back then? At 6 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and made myself coffee. My hands were steady as I poured it, steadier than they'd been in weeks. Today was the day. No more pretending, no more playing the fool. Today, Patty would learn that underestimating Grace Mitchell was the biggest mistake of her life. Marcus called at 7. "How are you holding up?" "I'm good," I said, and I meant it. "Surprisingly good. The team is in place. Diane is already at the venue, checking sight lines and camera positions. My DA contact, James Rivera, will be waiting in an unmarked car in the parking lot. We have 2 uniformed officers positioned at the exits. Everything is ready on our end. And the wire. I'll bring it when I pick you up. It's small, completely undetectable under clothing. No one will know you're wearing it. What time will you be here?" 1 o'clock. That gives us plenty of time to get to the venue, get you wired up in the car, and get inside before the ceremony starts at 3. After we hung up, I went through my morning routine. Shower, breakfast, the Saturday crossword puzzle I always did with my coffee. I wanted to maintain normalcy to keep my mind calm and focused. I couldn't afford to be emotional today. I needed to be sharp. At 11, my hairstylist arrived. I'd scheduled her to come to my house, claiming I was too nervous to drive to the salon. She put my gray hair up in an elegant twist and did my makeup, natural but polished. "You look beautiful, Mrs. Mitchell," she said when she finished. "Your sister is so lucky to have you in her wedding party." "Thank you, dear," I said, looking at myself in the mirror. I did look good. The woman staring back at me didn't look like a confused, incompetent old lady. She looked strong, dignified, and ready for battle. I put on the burgundy dress Patty had bought me. It fit perfectly, flowing and elegant. I added the pearl earrings Robert had given me on our 20th anniversary and the matching necklace. He would have understood what I was doing today. He would have supported me. "I wish you were here, Robert," I whispered to his photograph on my dresser. "But I can do this. I have to do this." Marcus arrived promptly at 1. He looked distinguished in his dark suit, every inch the respected attorney. In his hand was a small box. "The wire," he explained, opening it to show me a tiny microphone no bigger than a shirt button. "Diane will be wearing one too, and we'll have backup recording on our phones. Between all of us, we'll capture everything they say and do." He helped me attach the wire inside my dress, positioning it so the microphone sat just below my collarbone, completely hidden by the fabric. Then he showed me the tiny battery pack that would clip to my bra strap. "Test, test," I said softly. Marcus pulled out his phone. I heard my own voice coming through clearly. "Perfect," he said. "No, remember, try to get them to be explicit. We need them to state their intentions clearly. Ask questions if you need to. Make them explain exactly what they want you to sign and why." "I understand. And Grace?" He put his hands on my shoulders, looking me in the eye. "If at any point you feel unsafe or want to stop this, just say the word. We can shut it down immediately." "I'm not stopping," I said firmly. "Let's go." The Riverside Country Club was magnificent. Patty had chosen well: rolling lawns, a beautiful garden, a ballroom with crystal chandeliers and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. White roses and pale pink peonies were everywhere, and an army of staff members rushed around making last-minute preparations. We arrived at 2 o'clock. Marcus parked, and we sat in the car for a moment. "Diane is already inside. Position near the bar," he said, checking his phone. "She's wearing a navy dress and will introduce herself as your niece, Sarah. James and the officers are in position outside. We're all set." I took a deep breath. "Then let's do this." Inside, the venue was filling with guests. I recognized some faces: Richard's business associates, a few of Patty's friends from various chapters of her life. They all looked wealthy, polished, the kind of people who frequented country clubs and charity galas. The kind of people who would make sympathetic witnesses to a concerned sister trying to help her ailing, older sibling. Patty found me immediately. She looked stunning in her wedding dress, ivory silk with delicate beading, her blonde hairs colored, like mine had been gray for years, swept up in an intricate style. For a moment, seeing her so beautiful and radiant, I felt a pang of grief for what could have been. This should have been a day of joy. She'd ruined it. "Grace, you made it!" She embraced me, and I forced myself not to stiffen. "You look absolutely beautiful. That dress is perfect. You look like a princess," I said truthfully. "I'm so happy for you, sweetie. Come on. I need you to help me with something before the ceremony." She linked her arm through mine and started leading me toward a side room. "The photographer wants some pre-wedding shots of us together." Marcus caught my eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. He'd follow at a distance. The room Patty led me to was set up as a bridal suite: a full-length mirror, a table with champagne and glasses, a settee where her dress train was carefully arranged. Richard was there, along with a man I didn't recognize. "Grace, this is my wedding coordinator, David," Patty said breezily. "He's been absolutely wonderful helping us plan everything." David smiled at me. He was young, probably in his 30s, with a tablet in his hands. "It's lovely to meet you, Mrs. Mitchell. Patricia has told me so much about you. All good things, I hope," I said, playing my part. "Of course. Now, I just need you to review a few last-minute details. Nothing major, just some standard paperwork." He pulled out a folder and set it on the table. "With all the changes to the guest list and the seating arrangements, we need authorized signatures to confirm the final costs." I looked at the papers he was showing me. They looked official, with the country club's letterhead at the top. But as I scanned them, I realized these weren't about seating arrangements at all. These were legal documents. Power of attorney forms. Medical proxy authorizations. My heart started pounding, but I kept my face calm, confused. "I don't understand. Why would I need to sign these?" Patty put her hand on my arm. "It's just a formality, Grace. Since you're family and you've been helping with the planning, they need someone to authorize expenses if anything comes up. You know, if we need extra chairs or more champagne or something. It's standard for wedding parties." "But wouldn't you and Richard sign these?" "We will, of course," Richard said smoothly, joining the conversation. "But we'll be on our honeymoon for 2 weeks. If anything needs to be handled at the house or with vendors, this allows you to act on our behalf. And vice versa, if anything happens with your home while we're gone, we can help take care of it." It was such a smooth lie. If I hadn't known what I knew, I might have believed it. The papers looked official. The explanation sounded reasonable. And I was supposed to be confused, trusting, eager to help. "I suppose that makes sense," I said slowly, picking up the pen that David offered me. My hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from rage I was barely containing. "Actually," Marcus's voice cut through the room as he appeared in the doorway, "I'd like to review those documents before Mrs. Mitchell signs anything." Everyone turned to stare at him. Patty's smile faltered. "Marcus, this is really not necessary. It's just wedding paperwork." "Then you won't mind if I take a look?" It wasn't a question. Marcus walked over and picked up the papers, his eyes scanning them quickly. His jaw tightened. "These aren't wedding documents. These are power of attorney forms, medical proxies, and what appears to be a property transfer authorization. There must be some mistake," David said quickly, but he was already backing toward the door. "I must have grabbed the wrong folder." "Stop," Marcus said sharply. He pulled out his phone. "Everyone stay exactly where you are." Patty's face had gone pale. "Grace, I don't know what he's talking about. This is some kind of misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," I said quietly, setting down the pen. My voice was steady now, clear. "I know exactly what's happening. I've known for 3 weeks." The color drained from Richard's face. "You what?" "I found the documents, Patty. The ones you stored in my guest room. The forged loan applications. The emails between you and Richard planning to have me declared incompetent and steal my home." I looked at my sister, this woman I'd loved and raised and sacrificed for. "I know everything." Patty's expression cycled through shock, denial, and then something ugly, something I'd never seen on her face before. Raw anger. "You're lying. You're confused. You don't know what you're saying." "She's not confused," Marcus said. "And she's been recording this entire conversation." I pulled aside my dress slightly to show the wire. Every word lie. Every attempt to get me to sign away my rights. Richard moved suddenly, lunging for the door, but it opened before he could reach it. 2 uniformed police officers stepped inside, followed by a man in a suit who flashed a badge. "James Rivera, District Attorney's Office," he announced. "Richard Harrington, Patricia Mitchell, you're both under arrest for attempted fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit theft." What happened next felt like it was happening in slow motion. Patty started crying, reaching for me. "Grace, please, you don't understand. I was trying to help you. You're not well. Stop talking," Richard hissed at her. "Don't say another word." But Patty was panicking now, desperate. "I'm your sister! How can you do this to me? After everything After everything you've what?" I interrupted, my voice cold. "After everything you've stolen from me. After 52 years of me giving you everything while you plotted to lock me away and take what little I had left. I raised you," I continued, my voice rising. "When Mama and Daddy died, I was 15 years old, and I put my entire life on hold for you. I gave up college, I gave up opportunities, I gave up pieces of myself to make sure you had everything you needed. And this is how you repay me, by stealing my home, by planning to drug me and lock me in a facility. Tears were streaming down Patty's face now, but I couldn't tell if they were real or just another performance. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I was desperate. Richard and we have debts, and you thought I'd be easy to steal from," I finished. "You thought I was just some confused old woman who wouldn't notice." One of the officers stepped forward with handcuffs. "Ma'am, we need to take you in now." As they cuffed Patty's hands behind her back, she looked at me with something like hatred in her eyes. "You'll regret this," she spat. "You'll die alone, Grace. You'll have no one. I was the only family you had." "No," I said quietly. "You were the only family I thought I had. There's a difference." They led her and Richard out through a side door, avoiding the main hall where guests were gathering for the ceremony. David, the supposed wedding coordinator, was already gone. Apparently, he'd bolted the moment he saw the police. Marcus put his hand on my shoulder. "Are you okay?" I nodded, though I was shaking now. The adrenaline was catching up with me. "I need to address the guests. They need to know what happened." "Grace, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. These people came here thinking they were witnessing a celebration. They deserve to know the truth." James Rivera looked uncertain. "Mrs. Mitchell, I admire your courage, but this is a police matter now. We'll handle informing the relevant parties." "These people aren't relevant parties," I interrupted. "They're witnesses. They're the community that Patty and Richard were planning to deceive. They would have been the ones nodding sympathetically when Patty told them about her poor, confused sister who needed to be institutionalized. I'm not letting that narrative stand." After a moment, Rivera nodded. "All right, but keep it brief. We'll need you to come to the station later to give a formal statement." Diane appeared in the doorway. I'd almost forgotten she was there. She'd been so unobtrusive. "The guests are getting restless," she said. "They know something's wrong. Let's not keep them waiting," I said. We walked out into the main hall. The guests were clustered in groups, whispering, confused. The ceremony was supposed to start in 15 minutes, but there was no bride, no groom, and now no wedding party. I walked to the front of the room, where the officiant was supposed to stand. Someone handed me a microphone. I looked out at the sea of faces, curious, concerned, some already reaching for their phones. "Good afternoon," I said, my voice carrying through the room. "My name is Grace Mitchell. I was the bride's sister and maid of honor. I'm sorry to inform you that there will be no wedding today." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. "The reason there's no wedding is that the bride and groom have just been arrested for attempted fraud and elder abuse." I paused, letting that sink in. You see, my sister Patricia and her fiancé Richard weren't just planning a wedding. They were planning to steal my home, my savings, and my freedom. They forged my signature on loan documents. They fabricated evidence of mental incompetence. And today, during what was supposed to be a celebration of love, they attempted to trick me into signing papers that would have given them complete control over my life and assets. The murmurs grew louder. I saw shocked faces, some people already getting up to leave. I'm telling you this because many of you are friends or colleagues of Richard and Patricia. In the coming weeks, you may be asked to testify about their character. You may be approached by their attorneys. And I want you to know the truth from me, right now. They're not victims. They're not good people who made a mistake. They're con artists who targeted me because they thought I was an easy mark. I looked around the room, meeting eyes. I'm 67 years old. I'm a widow. I live alone. And people like Patricia and Richard count on people like me being too ashamed or too scared or too confused to fight back. Well, I'm not ashamed, I'm not scared, and I'm definitely not confused. And I hope that by standing here today, by refusing to be silent, maybe I can help prevent them from doing this to someone else. The room was completely silent now. "I'm sorry you got dressed up for nothing," I added. "I'm sorry your Saturday is wasted. But I'm not sorry I stopped them. And I hope you'll remember this the next time you meet someone who seems a little too interested in your elderly neighbor's finances or your aging parents' estate. Sometimes the people who claim to care the most are the ones who care the least." I set down the microphone and walked off the stage. Marcus was waiting for me, and Diane was there too. They walked me out through the side door, past the beautiful decorations and the untouched wedding cake and the champagne that would never be poured. As we reached Marcus's car, my legs finally gave out. I sat down hard on the running board, and for the first time all day, I started to cry, not from sadness, from relief, from exhaustion, From the weight of 50, 2 years of lies finally lifting off my shoulders. You did good, Grace, Marcus said gently, kneeling beside me. You did so good. Diane handed me tissues. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. I wiped my eyes and took a deep breath. Can we go home now? We need to stop at the station first, give your formal statement. But after that, yes, I'll take you home. As we drove away from the Riverside Country Club, I looked back one last time. People were streaming out of the venue, talking on their phones, shaking their heads in disbelief. The perfect wedding had become the perfect scandal. And Patty was in the back of a police car, her beautiful dress crumpled, her careful plans in ruins. I should have felt triumphant. But mostly, I just felt tired. The police station was a blur of fluorescent lights and beige walls. I sat in a small conference room with James Rivera and a detective named Sarah Walsh, going through everything one more time. They'd already reviewed the recordings from my wire and Diane's backup devices, but they needed my formal statement, my signature on documents that were actually legitimate this time. Walk me through how you discovered the fraud, Detective Walsh said, her pen poised over her notepad. I told her about finding the boxes, the spilled papers, the forged documents, and that terrible email from Richard. I explained how Marcus and I had built our case, how we'd documented everything, how I'd played along to catch them in the act. That was risky, Walsh said, but there was admiration in her voice. They could have gotten suspicious. They could have accelerated their timeline. I know, I admitted. But I also knew that if I went to the police right away, they'd claim I was confused or that I'd misunderstood. They'd spent months building a case that I was incompetent. I needed to prove I wasn't. James Rivera leaned forward. Mrs. Mitchell, I want you to understand what's going to happen now. We're charging them both with multiple felonies: identity theft, forgery, attempted theft by deception, conspiracy, and elder abuse. Based on the evidence we have, including the recordings from today, we have a very strong case. Will they go to prison? I've convicted. They're looking at significant time. 5 to 10 years, possibly more, depending on how the charges stack up. They'll also be ordered to make restitution for any financial harm they caused you. What about the loans they took out in my name? Those will be invalidated since they were fraudulent. You won't be responsible for any of that debt. We'll work with the banks to clear your credit and reverse any damage they caused. I nodded, taking it all in. And the trial? Will I have to testify? Almost certainly, Rivera said. But Mrs. Mitchell, there's a good chance they'll try to plea bargain once they realize how much evidence we have against them. They might not want this to go to trial. I hope it does, I said quietly. I hope they have to sit in a courtroom and listen to every detail of what they did. I hope a judge tells them exactly what they are. Walsh exchanged a glance with Rivera. You might get your wish, she said. It was after 7 when Marcus finally drove me home. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. We didn't talk much during the drive. What was there to say? The day had been exhausting, traumatic, and strangely anticlimactic all at once. When we pulled into my driveway, I saw my neighbor Helen standing on her porch, clearly waiting for me. The moment I got out of the car, she hurried over. Grace! Oh my God, Grace! Are you all right? I heard. Well, everyone's heard. It's all over social media. People are posting about what happened at the wedding. Of course they were. In this age of smartphones and instant sharing, my confrontation with Patty and Richard was probably already viral. I felt a flash of embarrassment, then realized I didn't care. Let people know. Let them see what elder fraud looks like. Let them understand that it doesn't just happen to strangers. It happens to sisters, to daughters, to people you trust most. I'm fine, Helen, I said tiredly. It's been a long day. I can imagine. Listen, if you need anything, groceries, company, someone to talk to, I'm right next door. Don't hesitate, okay? Her genuine concern brought tears to my eyes. Thank you. That means a lot. Marcus walked me to my door. I'm going to come by tomorrow morning to check on you, he said. And Grace. Lock your doors tonight. I don't think Patty or Richard will make bail, but just to be safe. I will. Marcus. I touched his arm. Thank you. For everything. Robert was right about you're a good friend. His eyes got misty. Robert would be proud of you. What you did today took incredible courage. After he left, I stood in my entryway for a long moment, looking at my home. My safe, familiar home that Patty had tried to steal. The walls held decades of memories. Birthday parties, holiday dinners, quiet evenings with Robert. This was my sanctuary, and I'd almost lost it. I walked through each room slowly, touching familiar objects. Robert's reading chair in the living room, the dining table where we'd hosted so many dinners, the kitchen where I'd cooked thousands of meals, the bedroom where I'd slept beside my husband for 33 years and then slept alone for 5. In the guest room, the room where Patty's boxes had been stored, I paused. Those boxes were gone now, taken as evidence by the police. But I could still see them in my mind's eye, could still remember the moment I'd discovered the truth. I should probably turn this room into something else, I thought. Something that wasn't Robert's office or Patty's storage. Something that was just mine. My phone buzzed. Text messages were pouring in, from former colleagues at the school, from church friends, from people I hadn't heard from in years. Word was spreading fast. Most of the messages were supportive. Grace, I heard what happened. You're so brave. I can't believe Patricia would do that to you. You're in my prayers. If you need anything, please let us know. But there were a few that stung. Are you sure you understood what was happening? Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Patricia always spoke so highly of you. This seems out of character. Family disputes should be handled privately, not at a wedding. I deleted those messages without responding. Some people would never understand. They'd rather believe I was confused or vindictive than accept that someone like Patty, charming, friendly Patty, could be a criminal. I made myself tea and sat on my back porch, wrapped in a blanket against the evening chill. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked, a car drove past, normal sounds of normal life. But my life would never be normal again. I'd lost my sister today, not to death, which would have been grief I could process, but to betrayal, which was something else entirely. How do you mourn someone who's still alive but dead to you? How do you grieve a relationship that turned out to be a lie? My phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Is this Grace Mitchell? A woman's voice, professional, slightly hesitant. Yes, my name is Jennifer Santos. I'm a reporter with Channel 7 News. I'm doing a story about what happened today at the Riverside Country Club, and I was hoping to interview you. No, I said firmly. No interviews. Or Mrs. Mitchell. Your story could help a lot of people. Elder fraud is a growing problem, and by speaking out. I spoke out today? I interrupted. I said what I needed to say to the people who needed to hear it. I'm not interested in being a news story or a cautionary tale. Please don't call this number again. I hung up before she could respond. There would be more calls like that, I knew. More reporters, maybe even TV producers wanting to turn my trauma into entertainment. I'd have to screen my calls for a while. That night I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Patty's face, sometimes as the little girl I'd raised, sometimes as the woman in handcuffs. I kept replaying moments from our lives together, trying to find clues I'd missed. Had she always been this way? Had there been signs? Or had she changed gradually, becoming someone I no longer recognized? Maybe the girl I'd loved had been real once, and somewhere along the way, she'd made choices that turned her into a stranger. I'd never know for sure. Sunday morning arrived with rain, fitting somehow. I made coffee and tried to eat toast, but it tasted like cardboard. Marcus called. Are you holding up? I'm okay, I lied. Just tired. I have some updates. Richard and Patricia's bail hearing is tomorrow morning. The DA is going to argue for no bail, given the flight risk and the severity of the charges. Do you think they'll be denied bail? Rivera thinks so. They have Richard's financial records now. He's in even worse shape than we thought. $500,000 in debt, 2 lawsuits pending against his business. And Patricia has no assets of her own. Neither of them has the means to post bail, and no one's stepping forward to help them. What about Richard's business associates? The people at the wedding? Apparently, they're distancing themselves as fast as they can. Richard's business partner filed paperwork this morning to dissolve their partnership. Nobody wants to be associated with this scandal. I felt a grim satisfaction at that. At least there would be consequences beyond just the legal ones. Their reputations were destroyed. There's something else, Marcus said, his tone changing. Patricia's asking to speak with you. My stomach dropped. What? She called her lawyer from jail, and her lawyer reached out to me. She wants to meet with you, to explain herself, to apologize. No, I said immediately. Absolutely not. I told them you'd say that. But Grace, her lawyer, is going to make the request formally. If you refuse, they might try to use it in court, paint you as vindictive, unwilling to forgive, that sort of thing. I don't care how it looks. I'm not seeing her. I don't think you should either, Marcus said quickly. I'm just warning you that the request is coming, and you'll probably get a letter from her, maybe multiple letters. Don't respond to any of them. Don't give them anything they can use to manipulate you or the case. After we hung up, I sat staring at my phone. Patty wanted to apologize. Or more likely, she wanted one more chance to manipulate me, to see if she could talk her way out of this, like she talked her way out of every other mess in her life. But this time, there was no talking her way out. This time, there were police reports and recorded confessions and boxes of forged documents. This time, I wasn't going to save her. The doorbell rang, making me jump. Through the window, I saw Helen from next door, holding a covered dish. "I made you some soup," she said when I opened the door. "Chicken and vegetables. I figured you probably haven't been eating much." "Helen, you didn't have to. Hush. When my husband died, you brought me casseroles for a month. Let me help you now." I took the soup, touched by the gesture. "Thank you. Would you like to come in for coffee?" We sat at my kitchen table, and I told her everything. Not just the events of yesterday, but the years of sacrifice, the pattern of giving and taking, the slow realization that my sister had never really loved me at all. Helen listened without interrupting, her face growing sadder with each detail. When I finished, she reached across the table and took my hand. "You know what's remarkable about you, Grace?" she said. "You're not bitter. After everything she did, you're hurt, but you're not poisoned by it. I am bitter," I confessed. "I'm so angry sometimes I can barely breathe. That's not bitterness, that's healthy anger at an unjust situation. Bitterness is when you let that anger consume you, when you can't move forward. You're already moving forward. You stood up for yourself. You protected yourself. That's not bitterness, that's strength." Her words stayed with me long after she left. Was I strong? I didn't feel strong. I felt broken, exhausted, grieving the loss of someone who was still alive. But maybe strength didn't mean not feeling those things. Maybe strength meant feeling them and doing what needed to be done anyway. Over the next few days, my life became a strange new routine. I met with lawyers. I reviewed documents. I gave statements to investigators. The police found more evidence. Patty had been planning this for nearly 2 years, long before she'd even met Richard. She'd started forging my signature small, on birthday cards and greeting cards, practicing until she could replicate it perfectly. She'd been stealing small amounts from my accounts for months, testing to see if I'd notice. Richard had been in on it from the start. They'd met at a financial planning seminar, how ironic, and had bonded over their shared debts and their shared willingness to exploit others. Patty had described me as a wealthy, lonely widow with no close friends, an easy target. Every new detail was another knife in my heart. The bail hearing came and went. Both Patty and Richard were denied bail. They'd remain in custody until the trial, which was scheduled for 8 weeks away. I tried to return to normal life. I went to the grocery store, to church, to my book club. But everywhere I went, people stared. Some approached me with sympathy. Others whispered behind my back. I'd become a local celebrity and I hated it. The woman whose sister tried to steal everything. Can you imagine? At her own wedding, I always thought Patricia seemed a bit off. That last one made me angry. No one had thought Patty seemed off, when she was charming them at parties or posting perfect pictures on social media. People only claimed to have known something was wrong after the truth came out. 3 weeks after the wedding that never was, I received my first letter from Patty. Marcus had warned me it would come, but I still wasn't prepared for the sight of her handwriting on the envelope. I almost threw it away unopened. Marcus had told me not to respond, not to engage. But curiosity got the better of me. I needed to know what she could possibly say. I opened it with shaking hands. "Dear Grace, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to even read this. But I needed to write it anyway, because there are things I need to say, even if you never want to hear from me again. I'm sorry. I know those words are meaningless after what I did, but they're all I have. I'm sorry for betraying your trust. I'm sorry for planning to hurt you. I'm sorry for every lie I told and every time I manipulated you. You asked me at the police station if I ever really loved you, and the truth is, I don't know anymore. I think I did, once. I think when we were young, before bitterness and resentment poisoned everything, I loved you the way a little sister should love her big sister. But somewhere along the way, I started to resent you instead. You had everything I wanted. A good marriage, a career you loved, respect from everyone who knew you. And what did I have? Failed businesses, failed marriages, a life of constantly starting over. I convinced myself that you owed me, that you'd taken from me somehow by being successful when I wasn't. That taking from you was just balancing the scales. I know now how insane that sounds. You never took anything from me. You gave me everything, and I repaid you with betrayal. I'm not writing this to ask for forgiveness or to make excuses. I'm writing because you deserve to know that you were right to stop me. You were right to turn me in. You probably saved my life, because I don't know where this path would have ended otherwise. I hope someday you can find peace. I hope you can remember the good times we had without the memory being tainted by what I became. And I hope you live a long, happy life surrounded by people who actually deserve your love. I'm sorry, Grace. For all of it. For everything. Patricia, I read the letter 3 times, crying harder each time. Was it real? Was any of it true? Or was this just one more manipulation, one more attempt to work on my sympathy? I'd never know. And that might be the cruelest part of all. I could never trust anything Patty said or did ever again, even if some part of it might be genuine. I put the letter in a drawer and tried not to think about it. But I knew I'd read it again. And again. Searching for truth in the words of someone who'd lied to me for years. Marcus called that evening. Did you get a letter? How did you know? Because Richard's lawyer told me Patricia's been writing letters to everyone. Her friends, her former colleagues, even some of the wedding guests. She's in damage control mode, trying to repair her reputation. So it wasn't real. The apology. I don't know, Grace. Maybe parts of it were, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that you don't respond. Don't give her any openings. I won't, I promised. But that night, alone in my house, I took out the letter and read it one more time. And I let myself cry for the sister I'd lost, the sister I'd never really had, and the relationship that had been a lie from the very beginning. The weeks leading up to the trial passed in a strange fog. I went through the motions of daily life, shopping, cooking, gardening, but nothing felt real. I existed in a state of waiting, suspended between the trauma of the wedding day and whatever was coming next. Marcus checked on me regularly, as did Helen and a few other neighbors. My church friends rallied around me, bringing meals and offering prayers. But there were also the people who disappeared, acquaintances who'd known both me and Patty, who didn't want to get involved, who found it easier to just fade away than to choose sides. I didn't blame them. This kind of scandal made people uncomfortable. It forced them to confront ugly truths about family, trust, and how easily someone could be victimized by the people they loved most. 4 weeks after the arrested, James Rivera called me to his office for a pre-trial meeting. I want to prepare you for what's going to happen in the courtroom, he said, gesturing for me to sit. Patricia and Richard's attorneys are going to try to paint this as a misunderstanding, as your sister trying to help you and you misinterpreting her intentions. But the evidence is solid, he assured me. The forged documents, the recorded conversations, the fraudulent loans, it's all there. But their lawyers will still try to create doubt. They'll say you were competent enough to orchestrate this entire sting operation. So how incompetent could you really be? They'll suggest you were vindictive, that you wanted revenge for old family grudges. That's absurd. I know. But they're going to try. Which is why your testimony is crucial. You need to be clear, calm, and consistent. Tell the truth exactly as it happened. Don't let them rattle you. What if I see Patty? I asked quietly. What if I have to look at her? Rivera's expression softened. It will be hard. But remember, she's the one who did this to you. You're the victim here. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Over the next 2 weeks, I met with Rivera 3 more times, practicing my testimony. He played devil's advocate, asking me harsh questions, trying to trip me up. It was exhausting, but I understood why it was necessary. They'll try to make you seem bitter and vindictive, he explained. So when they ask if you're angry at your sister, don't deny it. Say yes, you're angry. Anyone would be angry at being betrayed and nearly robbed. Righteous anger is understandable. It's the cold, calculated revenge they'll try to pin on you that we need to counter. But I did plan the confrontation at the wedding, I pointed out. That was calculated. No, you documented a crime and prevented it from being completed. That's not revenge, that's self-defense. There's a big difference. The trial was set to begin on a Monday in mid-November. The weekend before, I barely slept. I kept imagining worst-case scenarios. What if the jury didn't believe me? What if Patty's lawyers were more convincing than I thought? What if somehow, despite all the evidence, she walked free? Sunday evening, Marcus came over with Chinese takeout. You need to eat, he said firmly, unpacking containers on my kitchen table. And you need to stop catastrophizing. The case is solid, Grace. You're going to testify, tell the truth, and justice will be served. You can't promise that. No, he admitted. But I can promise that you've done everything right. You protected yourself, you gathered evidence, you reported a crime. Whatever happens in that courtroom, you should be proud of that. We ate in comfortable silence. Marcus had become my closest friend through all of this, and I was grateful for his steady presence. Robert would have liked seeing us become friends, I said suddenly. He always said you were one of the good ones. He was my best friend for 40 years, Marcus said quietly. Helping his widow is the least I can do. Besides, you've become a friend in your own right, Grace. Not just Robert's wife. That simple acknowledgement meant more to me than he could know. Monday morning arrived cold and gray. I dressed carefully in a navy suit, professional, dignified, but not flashy. Marcus picked me up at 8 and we drove to the courthouse in silence. The building was intimidating, all marble and high ceilings and security checkpoints. We met Rivera in a conference room near the courtroom. All right, here's how today will go, he explained. Opening statements first. Their side will go, then ours. Then we'll start calling witnesses. You won't testify today, probably not until Wednesday or Thursday. We're building the case systematically, starting with the bank fraud, then the forgeries, then the recorded conversations. Your testimony will be the capstone. Who testifies before me? The bank representatives who can verify the fraudulent loans, the handwriting expert who analyzed the forged signatures, Detective Walsh, who investigated the case, and Marcus, who can testify to your mental competence and the timeline of events. My stomach churned. And Patty, when does she testify? If she testifies at all, her lawyer might advise against it. Anything she says on the stand could hurt her case, and we have her on recording already. But Richard will probably testify. He'll try to claim he didn't know about the forgeries, that Patricia acted alone. Will they turn on each other? Rivera smiled grimly. That's what I'm counting on. At 9 o'clock, we entered the courtroom. It was smaller than I'd expected, with wooden benches and fluorescent lighting. A few reporters sat in the gallery, along with some people I didn't recognize, maybe law students or courthouse regulars. And then I saw them. Patty and Richard sat at the defense table with their attorneys. Patty wore a simple gray dress, her hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She looked pale and thin. She'd lost weight in jail. When she saw me, our eyes met for just a second before she looked away. Richard looked worse. His expensive suits and perfect hair were gone. In their place was an orange jumpsuit and a defeated slouch. He stared at the table, avoiding everyone's gaze. All rise. Judge Margaret Chen entered, and we all stood. She was an Asian woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. I'd looked her up online. She had a reputation for being fair but tough, especially in fraud cases. Please be seated, she said, settling into her chair. We're here today in the matter of the state versus Patricia Mitchell and Richard Harrington. Counsel, are you ready to proceed? Both sides indicated they were. Judge Chen nodded to the defense attorney. Patricia's lawyer, a slick man in his 40s named Douglas Brennan, stood for his opening statement. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he began, this is a case about family. About a younger sister trying to help her aging older sister navigate the complexities of modern finance. About misunderstandings, miscommunication, and a rush to judgment that destroyed a family and ruined lives. I felt Marcus tense beside me, but Rivera had warned me this would happen. Let them make their argument. The evidence would speak louder than words. Brennan continued, painting Patty as a devoted sister who'd only wanted to help, who'd tried to set up power of attorney for legitimate reasons, who'd been ambushed at her own wedding by a sister who'd misunderstood her intentions. Patricia Mitchell is guilty of one thing, and one thing only, Brennan concluded, loving her sister too much and trying too hard to help. That's not a crime, and by the end of this trial, you'll see that no crime was committed here at all. It took everything I had not to stand up and scream. No crime. Fargiar was a crime. Frad was a crime. Eldiarbasi was a crime. But I stayed silent as Richard's attorney, a severe woman named Christine Park, gave a similar opening statement. Richard had been misled by Patricia, she claimed. He'd believed the documents were legitimate. He'd had no idea his fiancée was committing fraud. He was as much a victim as Grace Mitchell. That actually made me laugh out loud. Just a short, sharp sound I couldn't contain. Judge Chen glanced at me but didn't say anything. Then it was Rivera's turn. He stood slowly, buttoning his suit jacket, and walked to face the jury. For a long moment, he said nothing, just looked at each juror in turn. Imagine, he finally said, that you raised someone from childhood. You sacrificed your education, your opportunities, your dreams to make sure they had everything they needed. You supported them through decades of failures and crises. You loved them unconditionally." He paused. "Now imagine discovering that this person you'd given everything to, had been forging your signature for years, taking out loans in your name, planning to have you declared mentally incompetent so they could steal your home and lock you away in a facility where you'd be drugged into compliance." The jury was riveted now. "That's not a misunderstanding," Rivera said quietly. "That's not someone trying to help. That's calculated, premeditated elder abuse and fraud. And over the next few days, we're going to prove it beyond any shadow of doubt." He outlined the evidence systematically. The forged documents, the fraudulent loans, the recorded conversations where Patty and Richard explicitly discussed their plan. He described how they'd tried to get me to sign papers at the wedding, papers that would have given them complete control over my assets. "Grace Mitchell did something incredibly brave," Rivera concluded. "When she discovered what was happening, she didn't just accept it. She didn't assume it was a misunderstanding or give her sister the benefit of the doubt. She gathered evidence. She documented everything. And she stopped two criminals from destroying her life." He turned to look at Patty and Richard. "The defense wants you to believe this is a family dispute, a misunderstanding between sisters. But this isn't a family dispute, this is a crime. And by the end of this trial, you'll know exactly what these two defendants are: con artists who targeted a vulnerable woman and got caught." As Rivera sat down, I found myself breathing easier. He'd laid it out perfectly, clearly. Surely the jury would see the truth. The first witness was called, Sandra Chen from First National Bank. She testified about the loans taken out in my name, confirming that the signatures were on file but that I'd never appeared at the bank in person. All the applications had been submitted online or by mail. "Is that unusual?" Rivera asked. "Not entirely," Sandra admitted. "Many customers do business remotely now. But in retrospect, with what we know now, there were red flags. The loans were for unusually large amounts given the property value, and the funds were always transferred to accounts we couldn't verify belonged to Mrs. Mitchell. Meaning the money went into accounts that Patricia Mitchell controlled, not Grace Mitchell." Patricia's attorney cross-examined, trying to suggest that perhaps I'd authorized the loans and forgotten, that perhaps I'd been confused about my finances. But Sandra held firm. The signatures were forged, the applications were fraudulent, and the money had been stolen. The handwriting expert testified next, explaining in meticulous detail how she'd analyzed the signatures on the loan documents and compared them to my genuine signature. She had charts and overlays and technical explanations that made my head spin, but her conclusion was clear: someone had forged my signature, and they'd done it skillfully enough to fool bank employees who only glanced at the documents. Could Mrs. Mitchell have signed these documents and simply forgotten? Brennan asked on cross-examination. "No," the expert said firmly. "These aren't Mrs. Mitchell's signatures. They're forgeries. Very good forgeries, but forgeries nonetheless. The pressure points are wrong, the flow is wrong, and there are hesitation marks that indicate someone copying a signature rather than naturally writing their own name." By the end of the first day, I was exhausted, but Rivera seemed pleased. "That went well," he said as we left the courthouse. "Their cross-examinations didn't land. The evidence is holding up. When will I testify? Probably Thursday. We have the detective tomorrow, then Marcus, then some of the bank employees who can testify about the specific fraudulent transactions. By Thursday, we'll have built the complete picture of their crime. Then you'll testify about discovering it and the emotional impact." That night, I couldn't eat dinner. The reality of having to face Patty in court, having to tell our story to strangers, having to relive the betrayal, it was overwhelming. Tuesday and Wednesday passed in a blur of testimony. Detective Walsh laid out the timeline of the investigation. Marcus testified about my mental state, my competence, and how I'd come to him when I discovered the fraud. Bank employees detailed the specific transactions and where the money had gone. Through it all, I watched Patty. Sometimes she looked sad, tears running down her face. Sometimes she looked angry, whispering furiously to her attorney. Sometimes she just looked defeated, staring at the table with empty eyes. I tried to feel sorry for her. She was my sister after all. I'd raised her. But every time sympathy stirred in my heart, I remembered those emails. She's lived long enough. She'll be in a state facility, properly medicated. Thursday morning arrived, the day I would testify. Rivera met me early. Remember what we practiced, he said. Tell the truth, stay calm, and don't let them rattle you. You're not the one on trial here. At 10 o'clock, I was called to the stand. My legs shook as I walked to the witness box. I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Rivera began with easy questions: my name, my age, my relationship to Patricia. Then he moved into our history. Tell the jury about your childhood with Patricia, he said gently. So I did. I told them about our parents' death, about raising Patty while I was barely more than a child myself. I told them about sacrificing college, about working multiple jobs, about always putting her needs first. Several jurors were wiping their eyes. Good, let them understand what I'd given up. Then Rivera moved to the discovery. Tell us about finding the documents in your guest room. I described that afternoon in detail. The boxes, the spilled papers, reading my own signature on documents I'd never signed. Finding Richard's email. Can you tell us what that email said? Rivera asked. I took a deep breath and recited it from memory. It said they would have me declared incompetent. That with power of attorney and Patty being my only family, they'd have control of my assets within 90 days. That the house alone would net them $400,000 once they sold it. I looked directly at Patty. And it said I'd never know what hit me. Patty was crying now, her shoulders shaking, but I felt no pity. What did you do when you found these documents? Rivera asked. I called Marcus. And then we made a plan to stop them. Rivera walked me through the rest of it, playing confused to set the trap, the wedding day confrontation. The moment they tried to get me to sign more fraudulent documents. Why didn't you just go to the police immediately? Rivera asked. Because they'd been setting me up for months as someone who was confused and incompetent. If I'd gone to the police right away, they would have claimed I was the one who was confused, that I'd misunderstood their help. I needed to catch them in the act, with witnesses, so there could be no doubt about what they were doing. And how do you feel about your sister now? I was silent for a moment, considering. I feel like the sister I knew died years ago. The woman sitting at that table is a stranger who wore my sister's face while plotting to destroy me. I'll never forgive her, and I'll never trust her again. Rivera nodded. No further questions. Then it was Brennan's turn. He approached with a sympathetic smile that made my skin crawl. Mrs. Mitchell, you've painted quite a picture of your sister as a villain. But isn't it true that she's always been grateful for what you've done for her? She said she was grateful, but actions speak louder than words. Isn't it possible that she really was trying to help you? That she saw you getting older and wanted to make sure your affairs were in order? By forging my signature? By planning to drug me and lock me away? That's not help, Mr. Brennan. That's abuse. He tried several more angles, suggesting I was vindictive, that I'd misinterpreted innocent actions, that the wedding confrontation had been unnecessarily dramatic. But I held firm. Rivera had prepared me well. Finally, Judge Chen called for a lunch recess. I stepped down from the witness stand on shaking legs. Marcus was there immediately, steadying me. You did great, he said. Really great. I thought I might throw up, I admitted. You hit it well. That afternoon, I was cross-examined by Richard's attorney. She tried to suggest that maybe Richard had been fooled by Patricia, that he was an innocent dupe. But I held my ground. The email showed they'd planned this together. Richard knew exactly what he was doing. Finally, after 3 hours on the stand, I was excused. I returned to my seat in the gallery, exhausted but relieved. The worst was over. Or so I thought. As I sat down, Patricia's attorney stood. Your Honor, the defense would like to call Patricia Mitchell to the stand. Rivera's head snapped up in surprise. Patty was going to testify after all. I watched as my sister walked to the witness stand. She looked small, fragile, nothing like the confident woman who'd planned my destruction. She placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. And then she looked directly at me, and I saw something in her eyes that made my blood run cold. She wasn't defeated. She was angry. This wasn't over yet. Patricia settled into the witness chair, smoothing her gray dress with trembling hands. Her attorney, Douglas Brennan, approached with a gentle, encouraging smile, the kind you'd give a frightened child. Patricia, he began softly, I know this is difficult for you, but I need you to tell the jury in your own words what happened, starting from the beginning. Patty took a shaky breath and looked out at the jury. When she spoke, her voice was small and broken. I love my sister. I've always loved her. Everything I did because I was trying to help her. I felt Marcus tense beside me, but Rivera remained perfectly still, watching like a hawk. Grace raised me after our parents died, Patty continued, and now the tears were flowing freely down her cheeks. She gave up everything for me. I know that. And I've spent my whole life trying to be worthy of that sacrifice, trying to make her proud. But I always fell short. No matter what I did, I couldn't measure up to her. Tell us about Grace's state of mind in the months leading up to your wedding, Brennan prompted. She was forgetting things, Patty said, her voice catching. Little things at first. Where she'd put her keys, whether she'd taken her medication. Then bigger things. She'd call me and ask the same questions she'd asked the day before. She'd forget conversations we'd had. One time she left her stove on and nearly started a fire. Every word was a lie. And yet she said them with such conviction that I wondered if even she believed them now. I was terrified. Patty went on. I couldn't stand the thought of losing her the way we lost our parents. So I started trying to help her get her affairs in order. I asked her about power of attorney, about making sure her will was updated, about financial planning. She'd say yes to things and then forget we'd discussed them. Did you forge your sister's signature on any documents? Brennan asked directly. No, Patty said, looking him straight in the eye. I would never do that. Everything I signed, Grace either signed herself or gave me explicit permission to sign on her behalf. She was just so confused that she doesn't remember now. My hands clenched into fists. Rivera had warned me this might happen, that she'd claim I'd authorized everything and then forgotten. It was her word against mine. What about the email that was entered into evidence? Brennan asked. The one from Richard discussing having Grace declared incompetent. Patty's face crumpled. I never saw that email. I didn't know Richard had sent it. When I found out about it during the police investigation, I was horrified. I think Richard saw how worried I was about Grace, and he took advantage of that. He had his own financial problems that I didn't know about, and he saw an opportunity. She turned to look at me, and the expression on her face was pure anguish. Grace, I swear I didn't know. I was trying to protect you, and Richard used that against both of us. I'm so sorry. For a split second, just a heartbeat, I almost believed her. The pain in her voice seemed so real, so genuine. This was the sister I remembered, the one who'd cried on my shoulder during her divorces, who'd called me in the middle of the night when she was scared or lonely. But then I remembered that recorded conversation at the rehearsal dinner. Her laugh as she said, I almost feel bad. She's been so sweet, so trusting. Those were her words, not Richard's. She'd said I'd lived long enough. Why do you think your sister set you up at the wedding? Brennan asked. Patty wiped her eyes. I think she was confused and scared. As people age, sometimes they become paranoid. They think everyone's out to get them. I think Grace found some documents she didn't understand. Maybe some financial records that Richard had, and her mind made up this elaborate conspiracy. And then, instead of coming to me and talking about it, she decided I was the enemy. That must have been heartbreaking for you. It destroyed me, Patty whispered. To be arrested at my own wedding, in front of everyone, accused of trying to hurt the person I love most in the world, and then to sit in jail for weeks, knowing my sister thinks I'm a monster, when all I ever wanted was to help her. Several jurors were looking at her with sympathy now. I felt panic rising in my chest. She was convincing them. She was turning this around. But Rivera still hadn't moved. He sat perfectly calm, a slight smile on his face. Why wasn't he worried? Brennan asked a few more questions, letting Patty paint herself as the devoted sister wrongly accused. Then he sat down. Rivera stood slowly and approached the witness stand. He didn't smile. He didn't soften his expression. He looked at Patricia the way a scientist might look at a specimen under a microscope. Ms. Mitchell, he began, you testified that you never forged your sister's signature. Is that correct? That's correct. And you testified that any documents with Grace's signature were either signed by her directly or signed by you with her explicit permission. Yes. Rivera picked up a folder from his table. Let me show you Exhibit 47. This is a loan application for $30,000, submitted to First National Bank 8 months ago. Do you recognize this document? I'm not sure. Look at the signature line. That's Grace Mitchell's signature, correct? Patty squinted at it. It looks like her signature. Yes. Did Grace sign this document? She must have. Or she gave me permission to sign it for her. Rivera nodded. Here's the interesting thing, Miss Mitchell. This loan application was submitted online at 2:47 p.m. on March 15th. We have the IP address of the computer used to submit it. It traces back to the coffee shop 3 blocks from your apartment. Patty's face paled slightly, but she recovered. Grace must have been with me that day. We went to that coffee shop together sometimes, did you? Rivera pulled out another document. Because we have Grace's credit card records showing that at 2:47 p.m. on March 15th, she was at the grocery store 12 miles away from that coffee shop, making a purchase. We have the receipt. We have the security camera footage. She wasn't with you at the coffee shop, was she? I must be misremembering which day. Let's try another one. Rivera was relentless now, pulling out document after document. April 3rd. Loan application submitted from your apartment at 11:22 a.m. Grace was at a doctor's appointment on the other side of town. April 27th. Credit card application submitted from your IP address at 3:15 p.m. Grace was at her church's weekly lunch. May 19th. Stop, Patty said, her voice breaking. Just stop. Stop what, Ms. Mitchell? Stop presenting evidence that you're lying. Objection! Brennan shot to his feet. Counsel is badgering the witness. Overruled, Judge Chen said calmly. Continue, Mr. Rivera. Rivera turned back to Patty. You said you never saw the email from Richard about having Grace declared incompetent. Is that correct? Yes, I never saw it. That's interesting, because we have your email records. The email was sent to you, Ms. Mitchell, and according to your email server, you opened it 17 times. You also replied to it. Would you like me to read your reply to the jury? Patty said nothing. The color had drained completely from her face. Rivera picked up another document. Your reply said, and I quote, perfect. I knew you'd come up with a solution. Just need to keep her confused for a few more weeks. I'll increase the forgetful old lady routine. By the time we move on her, no one will question that she needs help. End quote. The courtroom was dead silent. Several jurors were staring at Patty with expressions of disgust. You wrote that, didn't you? Rivera asked quietly. Patty's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Let me ask you something else, Rivera continued. You testified that you thought Grace was becoming confused and forgetful, that you were worried about her mental state. Is that correct? Yes, Patty whispered. Then why, in that same email exchange with Richard, did you write, and again, I quote, the old bat is sharper than I expected. Need to be more careful. Does that sound like someone who genuinely believed her sister was losing her mental faculties? That was just what? Just you and your co-conspirator discussing how to better deceive someone you were planning to rob? Objection! Brennan was on his feet again. Your Honor, this is argumentative. Sustained. Rephrase, Mr. Rivera. Rivera nodded. Let me be more direct, Ms. Mitchell. You didn't believe your sister was incompetent at all, did you? In fact, you were concerned she was too sharp, too aware. You were worried she might catch on to what you were doing. Isn't that the truth? Patty was crying now, but these tears looked different from before. These weren't the tears of a wronged woman, they were the tears of someone caught in a trap. I loved her, Patty sobbed. I did love her. Did you? Because on the night of your rehearsal dinner, you were recorded, by multiple witnesses, saying that Grace had lived long enough, and that it was your turn to have something. Does that sound like love to you? I didn't mean. You didn't mean for her to hear it. Or you didn't mean for anyone to know you said it. Rivera leaned in closer. Mitchell, you spent 52 years taking from your sister. She raised you, educated you, bailed you out of every crisis, gave you money whenever you asked. And when you decided that wasn't enough, when you decided you wanted everything she had, you didn't just steal from her. You planned to have her locked away in a facility where she'd be drugged and helpless. Isn't that the truth? No, the recordings don't lie, Ms. Mitchell. The docu-records don't lie. The only person lying in this courtroom is you. Objection! Brennan shouted, but Rivera was already walking away. No further questions. Your Honor. Patty sat in the witness box sobbing. Judge Chen asked if she needed a moment to compose herself before the defense could redirect, but Brennan shook his head. No redirect. Your Honor. He knew what I could see, there was no coming back from that. Rivera had systematically destroyed every lie Patty had told. The jury had seen her caught red-handed in her deceptions. Richard's attorney chose not to call Richard to the stand. After watching Patty's testimony implode, she must have decided it was too risky. The defense rested. There would be closing arguments the next day, and then the jury would deliberate. That evening, back at my house, I finally let myself fall apart. I sat on my kitchen floor and cried. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere I didn't know existed inside me. Marcus sat beside me, not saying anything, just being there. She looked at me. I finally managed to say, When Rivera was destroying her testimony, she looked at me and I could see it. She hated me. Not guilt, not shame, hate. I destroyed her life by refusing to let her destroy mine. And she hates me for it. Good, Marcus said firmly. Let her hate you. You don't need her love. You never really had it anyway. What you need is justice, and tomorrow, you're gonna get it. What if the jury believes her? What if they think I'm the vindictive one? They won't. You saw their faces when Rivera presented all that evidence. They know she's lying. I wanted to believe him. But I'd spent so many years trusting Patty, believing in her, giving her the benefit of the doubt. And look where that had gotten me. Friday morning, we returned for closing arguments. The courtroom was packed now. Word had spread about the dramatic testimony, and people wanted to see how it would end. Brennan went first. He tried valiantly to salvage his case, arguing that the evidence was circumstantial, that Patty's confused testimony was the result of trauma and stress, that families should work out their differences privately rather than in criminal court. But his heart wasn't in it. You could hear it in his voice. He knew they'd lost. Then it was Rivera's turn. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he began, I've been a prosecutor for 22 years. I've seen a lot of crimes in that time. Robberies, assaults, even murders. But I've rarely seen anything as calculated and cold-blooded as what Patricia Mitchell and Richard Harrington did to Grace Mitchell. He walked them through the evidence methodically. The forged signatures, the fraudulent loans, the emails explicitly discussing their plan, the recorded conversations where they laughed about deceiving her. This wasn't a misunderstanding, Rivera said. This wasn't a sister trying to help. This was a predator targeting her prey. And the only reason Patricia Mitchell is sitting in this courtroom instead of enjoying the money she stole is because Grace Mitchell was brave enough to fight back. He turned to look at me. Meshes. Mitchell could have accepted what was happening. She could have believed her sister's lies, signed those papers at the wedding, and woken up one day to find herself homeless and institutionalized. Instead, she gathered evidence. She documented the crime. She set a trap and caught 2 criminals in the act. That's not vindictiveness. Rivera concluded, his voice ringing through the courtroom. That's courage. That's self-defense. And that's why you need to find both defendants guilty on all counts. Because what they did wasn't just wrong, it was criminal. And they need to be held accountable. Judge Chen gave the jury their instructions. They filed out to deliberate, and we all settled in to wait. The waiting was agony. 1 hour passed, then 2. Marcus brought me coffee from the courthouse cafeteria, but it tasted like cardboard. 3 hours. 4. Is this good or bad? I asked Rivera during hour 5. Does a long deliberation mean they're struggling to agree? It could mean anything, he said honestly. Sometimes juries want to be thorough. Sometimes 1 or 2 holdouts need convincing. Try not to read too much into the timing. At 4:47 p.m., we got word that the jury had reached a verdict. My heart hammered as we filed back into the courtroom. Patty and Richard were brought in. They looked haggard, defeated. Patty didn't look at me this time. The jury filed in, their faces carefully neutral. Judge Chen asked if they'd reached a verdict. We have, Your Honor, the foreman said. On the count of identity theft in the 1st degree, how do you find the defendant Patricia Mitchell? Guilty. The word hung in the air like a bell. On the count of forgery in the 1st degree, guilty. On the count of theft by deception, guilty. On the count of conspiracy to commit fraud, guilty. On the count of attempted elder abuse, guilty. All guilty. Every single count. They went through Richard's charges next. All guilty except for 1 count of forgery, where the jury apparently believed he hadn't directly participated. When it was done, Judge Chen thanked the jury and scheduled sentencing for 3 weeks later. The bailiffs led Patty and Richard away. As they passed my row, Patty stopped and looked at me one final time. Her eyes were empty now, all the fight gone out of them. I hope you're happy, she said quietly. I'm not, I replied truthfully, but I'm free, and that's more than you were going to let me be. They led her away and I watched her go, the stranger wearing my sister's face, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just a tired sort of relief. It was over. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. They shouted questions, but Marcus and Rivera formed a barrier around me as we walked to the car. One reporter's question cut through the noise. Mrs. Mitchell, do you have any message for other elderly people who might be facing similar abuse? I stopped and turned to face the cameras. Trust your instincts, I said. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't let anyone, not family, not friends, not anyone, make you doubt your own judgment. And if you discover you're being victimized, fight back. Document everything. Get help. Don't be ashamed or embarrassed. The shame belongs to the abusers, not to you. Do you forgive your sister? Another reporter called out. I thought about that question, really thought about it. No, I said finally. I don't. And I don't have to. Forgiveness isn't something you owe to people who hurt you deliberately and without remorse. What I do have is peace. The peace of knowing I stood up for myself and stopped them from hurting anyone else. Marcus guided me to the car, and we drove away from the courthouse, leaving the reporters and the cameras and the spectacle behind. As we turned onto my street, I looked at the houses passing by. Normal houses where normal people lived normal lives. My life would never be normal again. The betrayal had changed me fundamentally. I'd lost my faith in family, in unconditional love, in the idea that blood meant anything at all. But I'd gained something too. I'd discovered I was stronger than I thought, braver than I believed, capable of protecting myself even when it hurt. That wasn't nothing. Marcus walked me to my door. You okay? I will be, I said, and I meant it. The 3 weeks between the verdict and sentencing passed more quickly than I expected. The local news ran stories about the trial, and I became something of a reluctant celebrity in town. People stopped me at the grocery store, at church, on my morning walks. Most were supportive, sharing their own stories of family betrayal or elderly relatives who'd been scammed. But some were judgmental. You sent your own sister to prison, one woman from my church said, her voice dripping with disapproval. That's not very Christian of you. I looked at her steadily. You know what else isn't very Christian? Stealing from your elderly sister and planning to drug her and lock her away. Would you prefer I let that happen? She had no answer for that. The attention was exhausting, but it also brought unexpected connections. I received letters from elderly people across the country who'd read about the case online. Some shared their own stories of being victimized by family members. Others simply wanted to say they admired my courage. One letter particularly touched me. It was from a woman named Dorothy in Oregon, who wrote, "My daughter stole $80,000 from me over 5 years, and when I found out, everyone told me to forgive her, because that's what mothers do. I didn't report her, and she went on to steal from her grandmother next. Reading about you standing up to your sister gave me the courage to finally file a police report. Thank you for showing me that protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary." I wrote back to Dorothy, and we began a correspondence that would eventually become a true friendship. It was strange how something so painful could lead to something so positive. Marcus checked on me daily, as did Helen and several other neighbors. They made sure I was eating, sleeping, not isolating myself. On the Sunday after the verdict, my pastor asked if I'd be willing to speak to the congregation about elder abuse awareness. I agreed, though my hands shook as I stood at the podium. For 52 years, I told the assembled church members, I believed that family was sacred, that blood bonds were unbreakable, that if you loved someone enough, sacrificed enough, gave enough, they would eventually love you back the same way. I paused, looking out at the familiar faces. I was wrong. Some people see love as a transaction. They see kindness as weakness and generosity as opportunity, and when those people are family, the betrayal cuts deeper than any other wound. Several people were nodding, some wiping their eyes. But here's what I've learned, I continued. Being a victim doesn't make you weak. Fighting back doesn't make you vindictive. Setting boundaries, even with family, doesn't make you selfish. It makes you wise. After the service, 6 different people approached me privately to share their own stories of family financial abuse. 2 were already in the process of reporting relatives to the authorities. One elderly man, recently widowed, confided that his son had been pressuring him to sign over his house. I didn't know what to do, he said, his voice shaking. He's my son, but after hearing your story, report it, I said firmly. Don't wait. Don't give him the chance to do what my sister almost did to me. A week later, he called to thank me. He'd contacted a lawyer and discovered his son had already forged his signature on several documents. The police were investigating. The ripple effects of my case were becoming clear. By refusing to be silent, by fighting back publicly, I'd given others permission to do the same. The sentencing hearing arrived on a gray December morning. The courthouse steps were icy, and Marcus held my arm as we climbed them. Inside, the same courtroom was packed again. Reporters, curiosity seekers, and several people I recognized from the original wedding guest list. Rivera met us in the hallway. Are you prepared to give a victim impact statement? I'd been writing and rewriting it for 3 weeks. As prepared as I'll ever be. Judge Chen entered promptly at 9, and we all rose. Patty and Richard were brought in, looking even more diminished than they had at the verdict. Prison had not been kind to them. The proceedings began with the probation department's sentencing recommendations. They'd investigated both defendants' backgrounds, criminal histories, and likelihood of reoffending. For Patricia, they recommended 8 years in state prison. For Richard, 10 years due to his prior civil judgments and the sophistication of his role in the scheme. Then it was time for victim impact statements. Rivera nodded to me, and I stood on shaking legs. I'd written everything down, afraid I'd forget or become too emotional to speak clearly. I approached the podium and placed my papers on it. Your Honor, I began, my voice stronger than I expected. My name is Grace Mitchell, and I'm here to tell you what Patricia Mitchell and Richard Harrington's crimes cost me. I looked at Patty. She was staring at her hands. The financial cost is easy to calculate. They stole approximately $73,000 through fraudulent loans. They damaged my credit score. They created legal fees and emotional stress that cannot be measured in dollars alone. But the real cost, the one that matters most, is trust. For 67 years I believed in the power of family. I believed that if you loved someone unconditionally, if you sacrificed for them, if you put their needs above your own, they would honor that gift. My voice cracked slightly, but I pushed through. Patricia Mitchell taught me that belief was foolish. She taught me that some people see love as a weakness to exploit. She taught me that the person you've given everything to can look you in the eye and plan your destruction without a moment's hesitation. I will never trust easily again. I will never open my heart to family the way I once did. When people tell me about their devoted siblings or loving relatives, I'll wonder if they're telling the truth or just haven't discovered the betrayal yet. Several jurors from the trial were in the audience, and I saw some of them nodding. Patricia had 52 years of my love, my sacrifice, and my support, and she repaid me by trying to steal my home, my freedom, and my dignity. She didn't just plan to rob me. She planned to have me declared incompetent and locked away in a facility where I'd be drugged into helplessness. I turned to look at Judge Chen directly. Your Honor, I'm not asking for vengeance. I'm asking for justice. I'm asking for a sentence that reflects the severity of what they did and prevents them from doing it to anyone else. Because people like Patricia Mitchell and Richard Harrington don't stop. They just find new victims. I'm 67 years old. I don't know how many good years I have left. But whatever time I have, I want to spend it helping other elderly people avoid what happened to me. I want to educate, advocate, and ensure that elder abuse is taken as seriously as it deserves to be. Thank you for your time. I returned to my seat, my legs trembling. Marcus squeezed my hand. The defense attorneys spoke next, pleading for leniency. Brennan painted Patty as a troubled woman who'd made terrible mistakes but deserved compassion. Christine Park argued that Richard had already lost everything, his business, his reputation, his freedom, and that a lengthy sentence would serve no purpose. Then Judge Chen asked if the defendants wished to speak. Richard declined. But Patty stood. She approached the podium slowly, her orange jumpsuit hanging loose on her frame. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. Your Honor, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I destroyed the most important relationship in my life. But I want Grace to know, she turned to look at me, that I am sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. I spent my whole life resenting you, Grace, resenting your success, your stability, your goodness. I told myself you'd had advantages I didn't, that life had been unfair to me. But the truth is, you gave me every advantage. You gave me everything. And I threw it away because I was too bitter and selfish to appreciate it. Tears streamed down her face. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to ever speak to me again. But I want you to know that losing you, losing your love and respect, hurts more than any prison sentence ever could. She looked back at Judge Chen. I'll accept whatever sentence you give me, Your Honor. I deserve it. All I ask is that someday, maybe years from now, Grace might find it in her heart to believe that some part of me really did love her, even if I had a terrible way of showing it. She sat down, and the courtroom was silent. I felt nothing. Her words were pretty, but words had always been easy for Patty. It was her actions that revealed the truth. Judge Chen took a long moment, reviewing her notes. Then she looked up, her expression grave. I've presided over many cases in my career, she began, but few have disturbed me as much as this one. Elder abuse is one of the most insidious crimes in our society because it preys on the vulnerability of those who should be protected and respected. She looked at Patty and Richard. What makes this case particularly egregious is the relationship between the defendant Patricia Mitchell and her victim. This wasn't a stranger targeting an elderly person. This was a sister, someone who'd been given everything, planning to destroy the person who'd sacrificed the most for her. Ms. Mitchell, you didn't just plan to steal from your sister. You planned to have her declared incompetent, institutionalized, and drugged. You planned to erase her autonomy, her dignity, and her freedom. That goes beyond simple theft. That's a profound violation of human rights. Patty was crying again, but Judge Chen didn't soften. Mr. Harrington, you enabled and encouraged this abuse. You saw a vulnerable woman and decided she was an acceptable target. You brought sophistication and planning to a crime that might otherwise have been discovered earlier. The probation department has recommended 8 years for Ms. Mitchell and 10 years for Mr. Harrington. I'm going to exceed those recommendations. My heart leaped. Patricia Mitchell, I sentence you to 12 years in state prison, with the possibility of parole after serving at least 8 years. You will also be required to pay full restitution to Mrs. Mitchell for all financial damages with interest. Patty's knees buckled, and her attorney had to steady her. Richard Harrington, I sentence you to 15 years in state prison, with the possibility of parole after serving at least 10 years. You will also be required to pay full restitution. Richard showed no emotion, but his face had gone ashen. Furthermore, Judge Chen continued, both defendants are prohibited from having any contact with Grace Mitchell for the rest of their lives. No letters, no phone calls, no third-party messages. If either of you attempts to contact her in any way, you will face additional charges. She looked at me. Mrs. Mitchell, I commend your courage in coming forward and preventing these crimes from being completed. I hope this sentence brings you some measure of peace. The gavel came down with a sharp crack, and it was over. Patty was sobbing as the bailiffs led her away. She tried to turn back to look at me one more time, but they kept her moving. Richard walked out with his head down, defeated. I watched them go. 2 people who tried to destroy me and failed. 2 people who would spend years behind bars paying for their crimes. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired and sad. There was no joy in this, no satisfaction. Just the quiet relief of knowing I was safe, that they couldn't hurt me anymore. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed again. This time, I was ready for them. Mrs. Mitchell, how do you feel about the sentences? I feel that justice was served, I said calmly. 12 and 15 years won't undo what they did to me, but it will prevent them from doing it to others. That's what matters. Do you forgive your sister? No, and I don't have to. Forgiveness is personal, not mandatory. What I do have is closure. I know who she really is, and I've accepted that the sister I thought I had never truly existed. What's next for you? I smiled for the first time. Leving, I'm 67 years old, and I've spent too many years being afraid and betrayed. Now I'm going to focus on the people who genuinely care about me and on helping others avoid what I went through. Any advice for other potential victims? Trust your instincts. Document everything. Don't be ashamed to report family members who are abusing you. And remember, you don't owe anyone your peace, your safety, or your dignity. Not even family. Especially not family who's proven they don't deserve it. Marcus drove me home through the early winter afternoon. Snow had started falling, dusting the streets in white. Christmas decorations glowed in windows, reminding me that the holidays were approaching. What are you doing for Christmas? Marcus asked. I don't know, I admitted. Usually I'd spend it with Patty. I haven't thought about it. Come to my house, he said. My daughter and her family are visiting from Seattle. It'll be chaotic and loud, but you'd be welcome. I don't want to intrude, Grace. You're not an intrusion, your family. Not by blood, but by choice. Which is better, honestly, by choice. I like that. Family by choice meant people who'd proven they deserved the title, who'd earned trust instead of demanding it because of shared DNA. I'd like that, I said. Thank you. That evening I sat in my living room with a cup of tea, looking at the Christmas tree I'd put up the week before. It was small, just a tabletop tree with simple ornaments. But it was mine, in my house, the house I'd almost lost. My phone buzzed. A text from Dorothy in Oregon. Just heard about the sentencing on the news. Proud of you. My daughter's trial is next month. Thank you for giving me the courage to fight back. I smiled and texted back. You gave yourself the courage. I just helped you see you already had it. More messages came in throughout the evening. Former students from my teaching days, church friends, Helen from next door asking if I needed company, even Diane, the private investigator, checking in to see how I was doing. I had people, not many but enough, quality over quantity, as they say. As I got ready for bed that night, I caught sight of myself in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me had changed. She was still 67, still gray-haired and wrinkled. But there was something different in her eyes. A strength that hadn't been there before. I'd survived the worst betrayal imaginable. I'd fought back and won. I'd protected myself and helped protect others. And I was still here, still standing, still Grace. 6 months later, I stood in front of a community center auditorium filled with elderly residents and their concerned family members. Marcus had helped me organize this. The first in what would become a series of workshops on recognizing and preventing elder financial abuse. My name is Grace Mitchell, I began, and I'm here to tell you how my sister tried to steal my life, and how I stopped her. I told them everything. The forged signatures, the fraudulent loans, the plan to have me institutionalized. I showed them the warning signs, the red flags they should watch for. I taught them how to protect themselves, how to document suspicious activity, how to report abuse without shame. After the presentation, people lined up to talk to me. An 80-year-old man whose grandson was pressuring him to refinance his house. A widow whose daughter-in-law was helping, with bills but never showing receipts. A couple whose son had been asking them to sign routine paperwork that didn't seem routine at all. I gave them all the same advice: trust your instincts, protect your assets, and don't be afraid to say no to family members who make you uncomfortable. But he's my grandson, the elderly man said, his eyes full of pain. If I report him. If you don't report him, what will he do next? I asked gently. And who will he do it to? He nodded slowly, understanding dawning. You're right. I have to stop him. Over the following year I became something I'd never expected: an advocate. I spoke at senior centers, churches, community organizations. I testified before the state legislature about strengthening elder abuse laws. I worked with law enforcement to develop better training for recognizing financial exploitation. It wasn't the retirement I'd planned, but it was meaningful in a way sitting on my porch and doing crossword puzzles never would have been. Patty's lawyer contacted me once, about 8 months after sentencing, asking if I'd write a letter supporting her early parole. The request included a letter from Patty herself, talking about the rehabilitation programs she'd completed in prison and how much she'd changed. I threw both letters in the trash without finishing them. Some bridges, once burned, should stay burned. 2 years after the trial, I received an unexpected call from James Rivera. Grace, I wanted to let you know. Patricia Mitchell came up for her first parole hearing. It was denied. Good, I said simply. There's more. During the hearing, they asked if she'd accepted responsibility for her actions. She said yes. Then they asked if she understood the harm she'd caused. And she said, Rivera paused. She said the real victim was her, because you'd ruined her life by refusing to forgive her. I laughed. A short, bitter sound. Even after 2 years in prison, she still thinks she's the victim. I thought you should know. She'll be eligible for parole again in 2 years, but given her attitude, I doubt she'll get it. Thank you for telling me, James. And thank you for everything you did. After we hung up, I sat on my back porch. The same porch where Patty and I had shared our last evening together before her wedding. But this time I wasn't alone. Helen was there, along with Dorothy, who'd flown in from Oregon for a visit. Marcus was grilling burgers, and his daughter was teaching me how to use a smartphone app that would help me organize my advocacy work. You know what I realized? I said to Dorothy. I spent 67 years thinking family meant blood. But these people, I gestured to everyone gathered in my backyard. They're more family to me than Patty ever was. Because they chose to be here, they earned my trust, and they'd never betray it. Family is who shows up. Dorothy agreed. Not who you're related to. As the sun set that evening, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: contentment. Not happiness, exactly. The scars from Patty's betrayal would never fully heal. But contentment. Peace. I'd lost a sister, but I'd gained myself. I'd discovered I was stronger than I'd ever known, braver than I'd believed possible, and capable of building a life that didn't revolve around someone else's needs. At 69 years old, I was finally free. Free from obligation to people who didn't deserve it. Free from guilt over protecting myself. Free from the belief that family meant tolerating abuse. Just free. And as I sat there surrounded by people who truly cared about me, I realized something profound. Patty's betrayal hadn't destroyed me. It had liberated me. She thought she was stealing my life. Instead, she'd given me the push I needed to finally start living it on my own terms. Thank you, I whispered to the evening air, to no one and everyone. Thank you for showing me who you really were before it was too late. Thank you for underestimating me. Thank you for giving me the chance to become who I was always meant to be. The woman who raised you is gone. In her place is someone who knows her worth, who protects herself, who refuses to be anyone's victim. And that woman, she's going to be just fine.